Hello, everybody. It looks like we are live. Let me actually share the link to the broadcast because I had not shared the link on my socials, but I'm really happy here because I have Selina, and she is the creator of the Madrina Effect, and we're going to be talking about passion and nonprofit. And I know she's going to do an amazing job sharing with you ladies, because that's what she's done already in Latinas Who Lead, which is what we're also celebrating today, and why we're interviewing Selina, because she did an amazing job there. So I can't wait to hear more from her personally. So here we go. How are you doing today, Selina? I'm so happy to have you.
I'm great. I'm pleased to be on here.
Yes, I'm so glad. And you are located near Chicago, you said, right?
Yes, correct. I'm just north
Amazing.
of Chicago, right off Lake Michigan. It's great.
Tell us a little bit more about you. Like, what is the Madrina Effect? What do you do in Madrina Consulting, and how did you start that?
So, the short story is my first career has always been in public service. So I was a librarian for a very long time
I love that. So
from
you've been around books. Yes.
I have all the time. So, from the very start, right out of grad school to being an executive director of a couple of library systems. And like a lot of people, I pivoted right before COVID, not
Right?
knowing
A lot
COVID
of
was coming,
transitions
obviously. So,
around
I
COVID
pivoted
time.
and then everything shut down.
Of
And
course.
so I wasn't working and I was trying to figure out what to do with my life anyway. And I started, I went back to school. I got another master's in nonprofit management and I started Madrina Consulting about midway through that process. But I've always worked with nonprofits, and government agencies and other public service
Yeah, even the
agencies.
library,
So that's
right? Was
yeah, and so it's been where I'm at. I've been part of governing boards. I've led nonprofits, and at one point, my husband and I started a nonprofit called Altogether Farming, which we started during the housing bubble, which we didn't know there was a housing
interesting.
bubble. So that was an attempt to grow food in a rural community. Where that first year, through borrowed land, we grew over 500 pounds of food, which is donated to local food banks.
That
So
is
we were really proud of
incredible.
that. But that housing bubble affected us, and so that's no longer in practice. But it taught me a lot about working with nonprofits. So I started Madrina Consulting initially thinking I was really jazzed to do consulting for Latinas and other women of color that were entering their own businesses. I have been an advisor for the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center here in this part of Illinois. I've been on my local chambers of commerce. I'm currently on a board member of the county chamber of commerce. And this was something I was comfortable with. I'm comfortable being asked questions and helping people figure out the answers to the questions they don't realize they have,
Yeah,
right?
and
So,
as
so I
resources,
started,
right?
that's what I thought I was going to do.
Uh-huh.
And I did have a few clients, and I realized that the more and more I was talking to people that were starting nonprofits. So
Mm.
I have completely embraced and gone back to my public service world, basically. And I focus on emerging and young nonprofits and their leaders to help them find some clarity in what they're doing, find confidence in being able to lead a nonprofit, and then create good, solid plans to move forward and find success. So
And
that's
in what
that's where it's
ways,
all coming.
like, is it financial, or in like, is there other aspects that you're supporting with?
So, I one thing I tell people is that I can really rock the things people find boring, right, or very
I love
tasking.
that. Like, is that the
So,
business side, right? Then
right. So I do a lot of online advising, and I see a lot of messages that say, "I got my 501(c)(3), which is the tax exemption
uh-huh.
status from the IRS. What do I do now? Or how do I get money? Or how do I start a board?" And really, those are sort of the things that you need to think about before you get your tax exempt status. So
Yeah.
I work with leaders to really solidify their idea, create a really strong mission statement, start talking about, how do you manage board members? How do you get board members? What do they do? How do they affect the organization? Um, what sort of policies and procedures you need to have in place that funders want? Because then the question is always, well, how do I get money? And
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
I do help them figure out like what they should be doing for fundraising, how to get grant ready, because there is a process to be able to apply for grants. You don't just call somebody and say, "Hey, I need a grant," and they say,
Exactly.
"Okay." It's a whole process.
The
So,
process. Exactly.
right. So it's all that structure that I really focus on with these young nonprofits. That's why I do it with young nonprofits because they haven't gone through that learning process, right? That trial
Yeah.
and error. So I'm trying to reduce the amount of trial and error and increase
Yes,
the
we all
amount
want
of
that.
trying and success, right? So, that's really
Especially a
what I focus on.
nonprofit, because they're meant to be very mission driven, and
Exactly.
people care about that mission and what they're supporting. And I love that your missions too. You've been in the education space. You've been
Mhm.
really supporting with all of the things that people need,
Mhm.
more of, especially like I said, in mission driven businesses,
Right.
which
And
I find
especially
really, really
now.
powerful, especially
Yeah.
now. Exactly.
Especially now, nonprofits, their funding has been challenged, and the funding streams have been challenged with the current
Yeah.
administration. So there's a
Yeah.
lot more
Exactly.
questions about how to find money and to do it well and to be supported by a community. And it's more than just asking for money. There's a whole lot behind that that needs to be addressed. So,
I'm so glad you're knowledgeable and have gone through the trial and errors yourself and
mhm,
can support others with that, because
mhm,
it's just incredibly crucial. And I'm really happy that there's more women like you out there supporting nonprofits specifically,
mhm,
because they need a lot of support as well.
mhm. Yes,
And
absolutely.
tell us what inspired you to write and be a part of Latinas Who Lead.
So, I have really made it a mission in these last couple of years to read as many books within like the general business genre
Hmm.
written by Latinas or other women of color.
Oh, that's
And
so good.
I've read a number of collaborations. I've read, single author. I've gotten to know a few of those authors and connecting with them on LinkedIn or Facebook. And I have been part of one collaborative book already, and the experience was amazing. So when I learned about this collaborative book, I thought that's a mash of everything I've been trying to, involve myself in being a part of a group of Latinas, putting our stories out there. Because I think we have such different and beautiful stories. We all have, general different backgrounds, even though we're all Latinas of some sort, right?
Yes,
We can't be
I agree.
pigeonholed, but we have experiences that we share. So I was really
Exactly.
excited to be a part of it. Yeah.
I'm so glad. And I know, it's part of La Cultura and a lot of what we wanted to talk about in Latinas Who
Mhm.
Lead. So I wanted to ask you, what role did your family traditions play in shaping your confidence as a leader, as a Latina leader, and supporting the Latina community?
So it was one reason why I named my business Madrina Consulting. I really struggled over what I wanted to call my business.
Mhm.
Calling it SGB consulting doesn't mean anything to anybody, right? But I wanted to embrace my culture within the name of my business and really develop the story around it. So as I spent a lot of time thinking about this, I realized that I had many madrinas, and this is what I write about. I had my baptismal madrina, I had my communal madrina, and not my communion madrina, and they were lovely, beautiful women. But I also had people who were madrinas to me, whether they realized it or not. And they
Oh,
either gave me support, gave me advice, they
yes,
connected me, and made it easier for me to move along in life. I was a teen mom, so I was not without challenges,
yes.
going through life. So they really made a big difference in how I moved forward in life.
I think that's really beautiful, and I'm so glad that you share that, because yeah, it's part of having like that
Mhm,
community, that mentorship, the people that are there
mhm,
to really guide you, and it sounds like they really
mhm.
had that influence on you. And so did
Absolutely.
becoming a young mother, right? How did that
Mhm.
experience teach you resilience and hustle and leadership?
So, I come from a nice, big Mexican Puerto Rican family in the Steel Mill area of
Yeah.
Northwest Indiana, very close knit community. And always, that vacations were just going to your tia's house to stay with your cousins, right?
Oh,
And I had my grandmother, all the women in my family were big influences, but my grandmother was very special to me. My grandma beautiful is what we called her.
oh,
And I was very pregnant, and I share this in the book where she asked me one day, what was I going to do? What did I want out of life?
hmm.
And I told her I wanted 6 children and a corner office. And
Wow.
and she said, okay. And to me, I mean, that was one word, but for me, going through life, and I'm sure she doesn't well, she's passed now, but I'm sure she never remembered it. We never talked about it again. But to me, that meant that my grandma said it was okay. If that's what I want, that's what I can have. And since then, it was always, I didn't want to be pigeonholed into a stereotype as a teen mom. I didn't want anybody to tell me that I couldn't do something because of my circumstances. So I've always gone forward. Like, I didn't want anyone to tell me that I couldn't be a leader, or I couldn't go to grad school,
I
right?
love
When
that.
once somebody
Yeah,
encouraged me, then that's what I was going
because
to do.
you're a mom, just because you're Latina, like all the things.
Right. Exactly. And I didn't want anybody I couldn't tell me I couldn't be a leader within the library world. And so I did. I became a leader within the library world. And so the same thing, I didn't want anyone to tell me that I couldn't start a business. So I did. I started a business to help other people, find success in their own ways. And so it
Yes,
I'm sure it starts even earlier than that conversation with my grandmother, but that's the moment I
that's
remember.
a point that was very
Mhm.
pivotal for you.
Mhm.
Exactly. No,
Mhm.
that's very, very powerful. I love that so much. And I think that in our cultura, right, we are very family oriented, and
Mhm.
how our family influenced us really matters to us. So I think
Right.
that's really beautiful and empowering.
Mhm.
And I'm glad that you had that role.
Yeah. Yeah. She was
Um,
wonderful. Mm.
I'm so glad. And how can women of color, especially Latinas, embrace their traditions, la cultura, and leadership spaces that sometimes don't reflect them?
So I believe, and I've written about this in other spaces, where, we have the lessons that we learned, right? We learned to, you know, más calladita, right? To be quiet, to not speak out of turn. Like, I wasn't
Yeah.
allowed in the kitchen if the adults were talking, right?
Hmm.
And so, I learned that as a matter of respect. But that lesson doesn't necessarily translate to the business world. So I really advocate for respecting those lessons that we learned, but then taking hold of our voice and using our voice. We could always be respectful, but that doesn't mean we don't have to speak, right? We can still speak. And so I think that's true of those lessons that we've learned as girls, as young women in our families, in our cultura, as you say, that I one of my love languages is food. Let me cook for all of you all of the time, but I don't have to cook if I don't want to, right? I don't have to do that. It's just my love language. I'm going to accept that. It's not because it's just my role.
Yeah.
Or, my house has to be spotless, or I never put my purse on
Yeah.
the floor, or whatever it happens to be. But I tell you what, I still, do the little things. I watch the eggs, and I keep red thread around for things, and all these different things. I think we need to find ways to incorporate the lessons into what it is that we want to accomplish. And I think that's completely possible.
I think that's incredible. I love that piece of wisdom because it's true, right? Life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you, So
Right,
take the
right.
time to see the lessons and make those shifts, and, turn something out of those passions that really stood out to you.
Yeah. And we
Um,
don't we don't have to give up our identity, right?
I love
We
that.
can we
Yes.
can still be powerful and hold on to the things that we found dear growing up. So,
I think that's a very empowering thing to say. Thank you so
mhm.
much for saying that. I'm so happy you're here. What is piece of advice you would give someone who has passion, but maybe doesn't know how to begin to make that kind of impact? Maybe somebody that wants to start a nonprofit, right? Because that's who you work with.
Mhm. First, I would say that You don't have to lead alone. You're not doing anything in a bubble. There are always people out there, your community, to help you through it, whether they're a sounding board, whether they give advice, whether you pay them to learn something or you take a class. There are ways to do things. It does not have to be done alone, whether it's business or nonprofit. You don't have to do this alone. And I think that's most important. You know, the second thing I would say is that research is your friend, right? If it feels intimidating, go to the library and ask a librarian to help you and figure out how to research what it is that you want to know, right? And from there, that's where you start hiring consultants or taking a webinar or paying for a workshop or whatever it happens to be. So that research and learning is always pivotal. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to start it. Now what am I going to do? You know, ask people, now what do I do? You need to do that research and that learning to get started.
Yes, and I think you brought up a lot of valid points, right? The research is important. The libraries are there. There's free
Mhm.
access to them.
You have a
And
lot
you
of free
can talk to the
access, yeah.
librarian, yeah. And then there's
Mhm,
amazing women like Selina who offer consulting on top of that.
mhm,
So the resources are there. It's
mhm,
just about, making your way to your local library, doing some research, and
mhm,
reaching out to someone amazing like Selina if you need that
mhm,
additional support.
mhm. Absolutely, absolutely, and I do free calls all the time, so that's always
Good.
an access there. Mhm.
Yes. No, that see, even like now there's just no excuse.
Right, 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 exactly.
And I know so many people out there that have beautiful, beautiful missions and
Mhm.
really want to support their causes. So I will definitely be sending those people
Absolutely.
Selena's way.
I would love to help out.
Yes,
Mhm,
I'm really happy that you're here. I'm really happy that you published your story, and there's
mhm,
so much more to her story. It's what not just what we shared today. She
mhm,
shared a lot more in depth inside of Latinas Who Lead. Our paperback is publishing here soon, so definitely keep an eye out for that. The ebook is still available now on Amazon, and you can grab a copy there too. But you can find out more, read more about Selina. I've dropped all her socials here and everything. And I'm just really grateful you came on here and that you were a part of this amazing project that's meant to be very impact driven and
mhm.
like
Well,
everything else you're doing.
I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of something so powerful, so thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm glad you're already doing lots of it too. Like this isn't your
Mm,
only, like your first project where you did something
right.
incredible.
I'm
So
open to doing more.
yes, and you'll be doing more. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yes, you will. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in. Thank you, Selena, for being on here and sharing your wisdom. And again, you can grab the copy of the book. It's available now, and we'll keep you updated on the paperback. Thank you, everybody. Much
Thank
love.
you.